Back at Snappy Tomato Pizza with Coach Jason James. Skyhawks set to play at St. Louis Saturday. And, Coach, let's go ahead and look ahead because I'm sure that there are a couple things I want to talk about first for playing St. Louis. One, you're kind of returning back to your neck of the woods. That's got to be a neat feeling for you.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Obviously, you always enjoy going home. And I've only been to the Chaffetz Arena a couple times, but spent a lot of time around St. Louis University's campus and followed basketball there since I was 8 and just kind of watched them be okay to really, really good. And it's been fun to watch them get to the level they're at. But, yeah, it'll be nice to go home and play in front of some familiar faces.
We're close enough to St. Louis where many of us have followed their basketball. What are some of your memories in the years of following St. Louis hoops?
Man, back in the day they used to play in the Kiel Auditorium before the Kiel Center, now Chaffetz Arena. But they played in Kiel Auditorium, and they had a guard named Gerald Jones and a big post player named Anthony Bonner. Bonner played with the Knicks
number 4
for a long time, maybe 15 years.
Yeah.
But back in that day, man, they were really, really good. And Gerald Jones was small but a really quick guard, and Bonner was super, super athletic. And you move from there, and even with that team, they had 2 players named Monroe Douglas and Roland Gray. Oh, man, them guys, whoo, they could roll now. I mean, they could, any of those guys could go 30-30 any night. Both of them were wings. Monroe Douglas was a little more flashy. Roland Gray was just get it done. Both of them about 6'4" to 6'6", and just fun to watch in there, man. And as it got, as it went further on from there, you got Charlie Spoonhauer and his squad with Donnie Dobbs and David Robinson. They had the local guys, Erwin Claggett, who still coaches in St. Louis, and Scott Highmark, who went to the same high school as I went to, and he actually calls some games for them, and he may be calling a game on Saturday.
Yeah.
And he was a heck of a player, really smart guy, really nice man, could really, really shoot it. And Claggett was a heck of a guy to play against. They had a player named Julian Winfield, whose dad worked at St. Louis University for Rich Grauer when Coach Grauer was the coach. And Julian went to Missouri to play with his dad. His dad was assistant at Missouri. Julian left, came to St. Louis. His dad came with him. But to make a long story short, when I was at Forest Park, I worked with Julian's dad, Lee Winfield. We were both assistants together, worked for Preston Thomas. And so I got a chance to know Julian, and he was a fun guy to watch. I mean, he had a little Zarek Knight in him with a jumper, if you can imagine that, at about 6'4". So the times just go on and on and on, man, about the history of St. Louis University basketball. And when the Kiel Auditorium, it was an event, man. I mean, it was fun to go down there. It had big lions out front and big statues everywhere. And I remember it like it was yesterday.
So you would go to a lot of games?
Yeah, we'd go to a lot, because Dad, he worked for AT&T, and they kind of had some tickets worked out down there. We'd go to a bunch to Kiel, and then the Kiel Center we'd go to a bunch too. I mean, pretty much until I left. A good friend of mine played for St. Louis University, Troy Robertson, and so we'd always go watch Troy. And we just grew up down there. I mean, there's a bunch of different places to go to watch a game, and we were there most of the time.
A lot of press has been given to St. Louis in the past few weeks because of the death of Rick Majerus, who was their coach and had not coached at all this year. Everybody has a Rick Majerus story. Anything you can share with us?
I don't have a Coach Majerus story, to be honest with you. I know he's done a heck of a job there at St. Louis, and I've kind of always respected him from afar. I've read his book, My Life on a Napkin, and it's a heck of a book, man. I mean, you talk about somebody who not only knows the game, but who genuinely loves the game. I mean, in his book, he talks about how much he loves to play, even at his age and, the size that he was. He said he still loved to play. He tried to play 2-on-2 and 3-on-3 even when he was at Utah, because it was more than just, hey, let's draw up a play to give to our guys. He wanted to play the game, and he talked about the joy of setting a good screen on somebody and those kind of things. So I really enjoyed his book, and I just had a lot of respect for how he did business in college basketball.
He was more than just a coach. He was a character. Lived in hotels, liked to live in a hotel, and I thought he was an outstanding commentator on television too, because he was very outspoken, he was energetic, and he was entertaining.
Yeah, and he knew it.
Yeah, right.
A lot of guys are the same things you're saying, but they don't know it.
They don't have the knowledge.
But he knew it, and he seemed like he enjoyed it when he knew it. You know, when he got to St. Louis, he lived in a hotel. He'd go to the Hill, which is on the kind of on the south of St. Louis, and where a lot of Italian restaurants were, and he'd eat there every night. They knew who he was. He didn't hide that. You know, I respect him because he didn't change who he was.
One of the stories was, and someone told me this, or I heard this on a sports talk show, that he would take the opposing team's broadcasters out to eat, or if a television crew was there, they would go to a restaurant and eat Italian the night before, and he just wanted to talk basketball.
Yeah, I heard that. And there's a lot of coaches in the business who knew him, who said that about him. And I think it always comes back to that. He was not afraid to talk basketball with anybody. And you just don't see that nowadays. A lot of guys think they're better or worse than so-and-so or so-and-so, but he just wanted to talk ball.
No, he was, to me, I told Cal Luther when I first started working with Cal and doing this job, I was a little intimidated by coaches because there's no doubt in my mind you know a lot more about basketball than I do because it's your life. And I probably know more about radio than you do because it's what I do every day. Mm-hmm. With Rick Majerus, and I've kind of lost that illusion of being intimidated because it's just the way it is, and I understand that. But Majerus was just like the guy that lived next door, and if you asked him a question, Coach, explain a matchup defense for me. He would get the salt shakers out, and he would just show you, and he wouldn't. I guess the word is he wouldn't talk down to you. Not that most coaches would do that, but I don't think he intimidated people.
It's hard as a coach sometimes when you're just in casual conversation talking about basketball, not to show how much you know, because that's what you're used to. I mean, you have to explain to your young men the different angles of an offense or defense. So when just a normal person asks you a question, naturally you over-explain it, kind of show off, but not intentionally. Mm-hmm. And Coach Majerus wasn't like that. At least to my knowledge, he wasn't. The people that knew him, he wasn't like that. He just wanted to talk ball. He just wanted to coach basketball. In his book, he said he'd go out to the park and pick 5 guys and just coach them, because that's what it was to him, just coaching basketball. You got to respect that.
When you said that not only was he energetic and good as a broadcaster, but he had knowledge, I'm just curious, do you respect Vital? I mean, I know he coached, but is he more flair than knowledge when you watch him do a game?
I think he knows it. No, he coached in the NBA.
And he coached at Detroit.
So I think he knows it. Yeah. I think that he brings a enthusiasm to the game that he's calling. He brings a different dimension than a lot of guys do when they call a game, because I do think he knows the game, but for him it's about the flair, the excitement, the sayings, and sometimes it's more about that than it is about basketball. I like guys like Dan Dockich, who used to be the coach at Bowling Green, worked for Bobby Knight for a long time. Well, he's great on TV because he can explain it to you, and he's enthusiastic about it, but he's not too much. He can go inside what a coach is thinking, and that's some of the things that I wish Dick Vitale would do more. Right. He's got a bunch of credibility now. I mean, he doesn't need any more, but I think for me, watching a game, he could go inside a little more. That would help a ordinary guy watching a game.
For me, even, and you know how much I follow the Knicks, Walt Frazier is their color guy on the MSG, and I just think sometimes he doesn't tell us the things he knows about basketball, because Walt Frazier knows a lot about basketball.
Right.
He says the old cliches. Either he's being lazy or he doesn't want to talk down to us. Well, I want to learn something.
Right.
I want to learn something, and I think Majerus would teach you something.
Yeah, no question. Yeah. No question about it. Clark Kellogg's like that. He's my favorite announcer because of that. He's not afraid to explain to you exactly what's going on. He's not afraid to throw a cliche in there or one of his own little sayings.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he can break it down for you. And I think as a normal person watching a game, that's what I would want a commentator to do. Break it. My coach at Forest Park, my boss at Forest Park used to say all the time, explain it to me like I'm 4 years old.
Right.
And that's what I think a good color commentator should do.
It's tricky, though, particularly in baseball. Tim McCarver and Joe Morgan were constantly criticized because they over-explained and sometimes stated the obvious. There truly is a fine line.
No question.
Yeah.
No question.
And I don't know if people know where that line is, because you're talking to an audience that has a very varied amount of knowledge about the sport they are watching.
Right.
That's the weird part.
Yeah, and I do. I agree with that. I think there is a very, very fine line between insulting my intelligence and helping me learn the game.
Because what's going to insult my intelligence is going to teach my mom something that she probably didn't know.
That's
and
right.
my mom
exactly
cares
right.
just as much about that game as I do.
You're exactly right. And whenever I watch games, I try to learn something from the commentators. no matter what sport
Even
it
at
is.
your level?
Oh, yeah. I try to learn something. I mean,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter. I mean, I learned this from Tim McCarver watching the World Series 3 years ago. Somebody made a mistake, and he said, even at its highest level, the game remains a simple one. I wrote that down, and I still use that. You know, stuff like that, I like to use that kind of stuff, and stuff that Jimmy Dykes says. I mean, I like to use it. He said toughness is a skill. Toughness is, you have to recruit to that. A lot of guys have a skill they can shoot. A lot of guys have a skill they can dribble. But toughness is a skill. I mean, he said that 6-7 years ago, and that's stuff I write down. I mean, you're just always trying to learn. You can never learn too much, especially, especially when we're in this profession. I can never learn too much from those guys.
Yeah, especially I do enjoy former athletes and former coaches who are really good at that. And it's well, we have to talk about our opponent, but it's also interesting to me that some athletes have all this knowledge and they don't have the ability to communicate.
Yes.
Because I see that all the time.
Yes. I mean, and as much as I love Magic Johnson, he was like that.
Yeah.
Not a very good commentator. He's not very good on ESPN.
Right.
Because he doesn't have a filter.
Right. But do you like Barkley?
I do like Barkley, and I guess it's different because Barkley's a little more articulate than Magic is. I mean, Magic will invent words. Mm-hmm. He'll say words that nobody.
True.
But Barkley he doesn't care. That's why I like Barkley. He doesn't care.
Barkley's the best.
Yeah, he doesn't care, and he has a filter, but he'll say it in the right way, if that makes sense.
And he has credibility.
Yes.
Because he's been there and he does it. And those guys that he's talking about respect him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, St. Louis will be the opponent Saturday. Talk about this year's team, Coach.
Very good team, fundamentally sound. I think obviously losing Coach Majerus is tough, and he recruited all those young men. But if you're going to have somebody step in, man, Coach Cruz does a heck of a job. Worked at Evansville, worked for Bobby Knight. They're doing some of the same stuff. They just won't beat themselves. Won't beat themselves at any point in the game.
You guys busy this week with finals and practices?
Yeah, we're off today. We'll practice tomorrow through Friday. We'll leave Friday morning and try to practice there and try to compete on Saturday.
Okay, thank you, Coach.
Thanks, Chris.
Coach Jason James, again, we'll be on the radio Saturday night in St. Louis with the UT Martin Skyhawk men's basketball team. And then Sunday afternoon, the Skyhawk women take on Indiana State. I want to say thanks to Frank and the gang here at Snappy Tomato Pizza and Benita back at studios. And stay with us on our flagship station. Coming up next, it's the Ball Calls program. It'll be a big one tonight with the hiring of the new football coach. Plus, they'll talk basketball on there, too. A reminder to go to utmsports.com on the World Wide Web for more information when it comes to our schedules and teams and players. Or you can go to ovcsports.com to watch some of the games on the OVC Digital Network. For Coach James, Coach McMillan, Frank, and the gang, I'm Chris Brinkley saying so long, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Skyhawk Talk on the UT Martin Skyhawk Sports Network.